Hello, siblings of the light, and welcome back to another episode of Gnostic Revival. Today's episode is going to be a little bit of a heavier one. I'm calling it Perez Hilton'S God Encounter and the collapse that followed, a Gnostic warning. In our pursuit of spiritual enlightenment, and sometimes when we're not even trying to, we will receive so much light that sometimes it's too much. And in the case of Perez Hilton and what he's gone through recently with, his hospitalizations, talking about how he saw God and communed with him, I think that, I see at least that he may have absorbed too much light too soon. And not that he meant to or that he was searching for it or anything like that in the least. But, sometimes these things happen. So to go into that, let's go into the timeline of what exactly is going on and what I'm talking about. Well, here recently, Perez Hilton just had a live stream where, and I'm going to stop right here, and this is kind of a trigger warning, for anyone. So, if any talk of self-harm or anything like that, sets you off, I'm letting you know now. I'm about to start talking about that. But anyway, Perez Hilton just had a live stream where he literally started cutting himself and slicing himself to the point to where blood was quite literally gushing from his body. It's quite horrific scene, to be honest with you. TikTok immediately reacted, whenever they found out about it, or at least, that's what it seems. But where did this all begin? That's the thing. Let's rewind a little bit and see where this started. Well, back in March 2026, Perez had a hospitalization for about 21 days. And there he was fighting with sepsis and things of that nature because he had gotten a flu and he took, I'm not sure whether he took too much cough medicine or how exactly this happened, but somehow the cough medicine made a ulcer which perforated his bowels and caused a sepsis. So that happened, and he got so sick that he had a vision where he saw God, and he had a whole basically come to Jesus turning around of his life. Well, time goes on, and he starts apologizing about his past behavior. And that's about April 2026, sometime around there. And he is crying on camera, calling them happy tears and things of that nature. And then this, behavior escalates. And he says that he needs to basically go to Miami. Move to Miami with his kids and his baby mama. I don't know if it's his wife or anything like that. As far as I'm aware, I thought he was a gay man. I know that he has had his children out of surrogacy. But as far as how the baby mama enters into the situation, I really don't know. But anyway, he said the Holy Spirit spoke to him, and she said, move to Miami, Florida. So he does. Well, that was in June 2026. And of course, through this whole time, he's, going to church, he's studying the Bible, going to the gym and things of that nature. But once he moves to Miami and he gets absorbed into, his life there, he, admits that, he got unfocused, And then, by August 4th, which is just literally 2 days ago, he had that live stream incident on TikTok where he harmed himself. Now, let's focus on... Let's take, Perez Hilton at his word. Okay? First let's first address, the medical aspect of this. The man had sepsis. And one can argue, sure, materially, he was so sick that he believed he talked to God, and now he's turning his life around and making these huge changes, in his life. And, there are conditions where, I believe it's called post-sepsis syndrome or post-sepsis disorder or something like that. I think it's post-sepsis syndrome. Yeah, like PSS. I don't know. Something like that. But anyway, there's long-term mental health effects, of course. Sepsis perforates the blood-brain barrier pretty well, because it's a massive, blood bacterial infection. That's pretty deep in you. That's something really hard to fight. And, going through that, I'm sure you'll see things. And, but I don't want to go that way, of course. Duh, I'm a Gnostic Christian. I want to take him at his word. I want to say, okay, sure. You really had this moment. But what if that's true? What if he did have that moment? And this man, even though he was raised Catholic, he said he was raised Catholic and had a Jesuit, based education. Sure. But he said he had no religious affiliation, didn't feel any certain way about God or anything like that. And then he comes out of this, sepsis and stuff like that, or a moment in his sepsis where he's like, I've had an encounter with God. I'm changing my life around. Well, the thing is even if this is true and he has been touched by God, remember, there's three parts of us. There's the body, there's the soul, and there's the spirit. So body, mind, and spirit. Body, soul, spirit, body, mind, spirit. And so, of course, certain Gnostic sects broke this out into hylic, psychic, and pneumatic, which is basically, the Greek terms for, similar things I'm saying in English. And of course, someone who doesn't believe in God, someone who rejects the spiritual realm and stuff like this, they're automatically a high-like. Okay? And a high-like person, like, receiving all of that light, like, literally being embraced by God and seeing God and saying, like, wow, you're definitely real, It's one of those moments like, yeah, sure, blessed are those who haven't seen yet they, believe. Well, he has seen, now he believes. But there's a thing about that. Like, if you receive too much light, it can really mess with you. It can really imbalance you. There's a fluctuation of, real energies and stuff. Because, usually whenever these energies are brought into the body, it's brought into the body of a person who has prepared for this. Someone who has, who is seeking God. Someone who is, fervent for that, that light. Perez wasn't looking for that. And so what we call this is a flash of, pneumatic inspiration, if you will. And one of the best ways I can explain this psychologically is what Jung called ego inflation, right? It's where the ego identifies with the close embrace of the divine, that purified essence, where the ego has not even yet been purified yet, which why it goes through that inflation, and sometimes it can look like a positive thing, like someone goes to the gym and they start taking care of their body. They start going to Bible study. They start going to church and stuff like this. They might start asking for forgiveness and stuff like that. These are all great things, right? But the thing is like, we can start doing that. But if it doesn't become a consistent thing, then the attunement, our alignment through our new pneumatic presence of who we are will go to a different direction, right? So let's say God is, compass north, okay? And the opposite of God, whatever you may think of that, or, however you think of that idea, because, you come out of alignment after you've now become, pneumatically attuned, that whenever you come out of practice, you stop going to the gym, you stop doing your Bible practice, you stop going to church, your compass is going to flip back to the attunement of who you, of the, basically the energetic being of who you were before, that presence came upon you, but it comes back in a vengeance. And, there's another like Jungian word or something like that. It's like enantiodromia. Yeah, enantiodromia, I think is how it's pronounced or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, it's basically what I'm talking about here, like the flipping of the compass. It's like the complete opposite of you know, the higher good that you're trying to aim for, you know? Like I said, you have become a good tuning fork, but you gotta be sure, I keep saying, a lot, sorry, but you gotta be sure that you're setting that proper frequency. And, for Perez, him setting that proper frequency was going to the gym, reading the Bible, going to church, things of that nature. And he came out of alignment with that. This also goes into Thomas Logion too, okay? Where it says, you will seek and you will keep seeking. No, you'll seek, you'll find, and you'll keep seeking, you'll be horrified. And then once you're horrified, you'll keep seeking, you'll be amazed. And, from there, it's like you will basically be disturbed and then be set free eventually, right? And it's kind of this concept that I'm talking about here too, about this pattern of, taking in light, having to digest it, and then decompressing from this enlightenment that you just took in. And you see here the Gnostics have wrote about it. Obviously, Thomas Logion too. Look it up. So this isn't something we should be foreign to. This is something that could actually happen, in mystical practice. This is why I completely believe in orders and degree systems and initiation and a, traditional practice and people speaking from a basis of tradition rather than just, random magic and stuff like that. We have to make sure that we're making sure that we're not drawing people deeper into the forgetfulness and bringing people out of the Kenoma. And what I found really odd too during the video is he kept saying something like, I'm doing this for my children. I'm doing this for my children. I didn't really truly understand what that meant. And I'm talking about during the live stream when he, was hurting himself. This is, another reason why I bring up the fact that he had sepsis and, it could very well be that he, had lost his mind. I know I keep bringing up the spiritual stuff and then, grounding it in the fact that he might be mentally ill. But that's to be sure that I'm covering this, properly. I want to be sure that I'm not just like blanket, representing this as a moment of theomania, right? But that's how it feels to me. But again, I want to be fair and I want to point out this could very well just be sepsis. And in no way this is meant to mock, Perez Hilton, or to like try to capitalize on, his pain. Especially since he basically made a career of that. And, that's one of the reasons why this neurosis is kind of bubbling up, which, like neurosis and all this stuff is a spiritual matter. All this stuff, like no matter what you may think about it, this is all a spiritual matter, whether, we're looking at it from a psychic point of view or a pneumatic or, materialistic. It's all a spiritual matter to some degree. But what I'm saying is like, I'm legitimately looking at this as a moment to say, this is why I believe in orders, initiation, and things like this. Because awakening can have a certain level of intensity that, is pretty much like undescribable, really, in some people's cases. Some people have a radical shakeup when they take on spiritual work, or whenever, a spiritual influx comes upon them. And like, different people go through this in different points in their lives and stuff like this. I should have looked at, I really should. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Maybe I'll do it real quick. I don't know. I should have done it earlier, but let me do it real quick. Perez Hilton'S birthday. And his Saturn return. Because this is the type of stuff that people go through on their Saturn returns. It really is. Let me see. It says Perez Hilton was born on March 23rd, 1978. So he should be happening again, right? How old is he, like 40 now? He's in his late 40s. He is well past his first Saturn turn and not currently going through his second one. Oh, okay. Huh. So he's in between Saturn returns, if you will, Like, he still has... What is it? He's... God, I'm so terrible at math. How old is this man? Let's see. 1978. Oh. I'm so embarrassed. I can't do math, y'all. Hold on. He's 48 right now. Okay. So he has about 10 years before his next Saturn return. But, that's the thing. Saturn is a huge force. And, that's why I make this as like a comparative to that. What I think he's going through is he got sick at like basically the right time, and he was in the right place. And an energetic influx came upon him because, we're in an era right now where everyone is getting interested in Gnosticism. Everybody and their mama. And if you look into a lot of the astrology and the numerology of what's been, the dates that have been going on and things of that nature, you see, amazing patterns. that's something I really want to look into now that I think about it, is look into the astrology of when Perez got sick and things of that nature. But besides all that, this was all to say that take your spirituality seriously, y'all. Take your awakening seriously. This is a truly deep process. This, or as ordered as you want it to be. But remember, it has its boons and its consequences. And you need to ask yourself what you're prepared to go through. And always remember that when you remember the light, when the time comes, the light will remember you.
There is an answer. There is a way.
Gnostic.